Hey, buddy. Welcome to another episode of Extra Bases with Bristol and Booth. Trying something a little different. Jeremy found this new platform, and he said, we've got to do this. So now we're doing it. We are live on Twitter, and pretty soon live on Facebook and some other places. So, Jeremy, we are now 44 seconds in. Is it everything you thought it would be?
Yeah, so far, and I got to tell you, I didn't find it. One of our colleagues, Kim Davis, hit me to this thing, and I asked her some questions about it, looked it up, and I just thought it'd be really cool. A lot of stuff we do is live, and a lot of stuff we do is is sometimes off the cuff on camera anyway. So why not just take it out and let's see what we get.
I'm trying to figure out how I can make you the main speaker on here.
I'm okay with you being the main speaker.
Huh?
I'm good with you being the main speaker. I'm just following the Emmys.
Now I see it. All right, coming up on this episode of Extra Bases, we're leading off with Tales from the Lockout, what Jeremy's been hearing behind the scenes with teams, and certainly it's not business as usual. Has the Hall of Fame become now the Hall of Very Good? The Brewers have signed Jonathan. Wait, what?
I like that. That was good. See, that's why you have the Emmys right there. That was good.
The Brewers have signed former Astro Jon Singleton, and we are doing a flashback. We are flashing back to a 2015 report on a pitcher who is now with the Baltimore Orioles. So, Jeremy, it feels like there's a lockout going on, but yet in some ways it doesn't feel like one is going on because other than free agency and the Rule 5 draft, this is typically a slower time of the year. So what are you hearing from guys? How are they dealing with the lockout, and how are they approaching this new normal for the next month, 2 months, whatever, how long it goes on from now?
It depends on who you talk to with this. The lockout is something that can range anywhere from people thinking it's going to start on time, to going into May. I mean, you've got people who here on both sides, on both the union side and on Major League Baseball, the ownership side, extremely dug in on where this is going to go. And look, at the end of the day, the players have some real reasons to be upset. They have some real reasons to want some change. They have some real reasons to have some integrity concerns with some things that have gone on at the highest level in the commissioner's office. And lots of times people take this stuff, they get real sensitive, and they think, that means that if there's something going on with the office or something going on with this person in the office, and that means that everybody's bad. And that's not the case. But it does mean is that there are two sides here. And the simplest way to define this from a fan perspective as to why the players don't trust the owners anymore doesn't have anything to do with actual, nickels and dimes and pennies, right? We're talking about an entertainment business and fair share of the entertainment dollar. What we're also talking about, though, here is the baseballs. And all you need to realize is the change in the baseballs without telling anybody, and what could happen to the players' statistics, future contracts, what that does to players coming behind them, and how that affects their day-to-day performance, even down to injury. So to do something like that without telling the players is pretty devious. And I think that simple action should sum up to every fan why this is going the way that it is. What I can tell you is that the players are dug in for sure. They've got enough money on their side to last. They want substantive change. They don't want to be have this game continue to be run the way it is, and they're going to do what they can to make a change.
I do think devious is a great word because, man, to think that would never come out in this day and age, I'm just shocked that they would do something like that. First of all, why wouldn't you talk to your partners, right? They always claim the players were partners in this.
Right.
And the fact that they would just go ahead and do that, devious is a really good word.
I can't see any reason why you would change the baseball that we're using in games and not tell anybody you're doing it. I don't understand that. It doesn't resonate to me. If I'm a pitcher, I'm concerned I got to throw this thing. If I'm a hitter, I want to understand how the ball is going to fly. I mean, certainly in a day and age of let's call it numeric dominance with the analytics and the different ways of looking at things. You don't want to be in a situation where that information isn't available. And I'm confident these guys had the information. So, that's not necessarily an individual team thing. That's not a club thing. That's not a GM thing. This is a commissioner's office thing and an ownership thing. And there's going to have to be some changes with that. And, players are right to not trust these guys right now. They're absolutely correct.
About 3 hours ago, The Athletic, Jayson Stark, tweeted out his proposal to fix the game in terms of tanking, mentioning he has a proposal when it comes to the Major League Baseball draft, and he believes that perhaps incentivizing clubs to win, to actually try and do well, and then reward them with draft picks at the head of the draft. That's his plan, that basically reverse the draft order, and then you reward the teams on the bubble. So, for example, the Blue Jays would have the number 1 pick this past year because they just missed the playoffs. Right. Mariners, Athletics, Reds, Phillies, that would be your top 5. That's a little too far for me. I think you do reward the teams who are not good. I think you've got to do that to help clubs get better. And I just think this is a little bit overboard. Certainly, Jayson Stark, amazing writer, his contributions to the game, but I think this is a little overboard in my opinion.
If you're talking about the way it's supposed to work with real competition, real integrity for what's going on and how these teams are going to compete and try to win every year and build systems, everything that it's supposed to be about. If you're talking about doing things with that premise, then I agree with you. I think it's too far. I don't think you reward the rich by making them richer with the front of the draft. However, we're not in that age right now. We're in an age of people, of executives who sell a lot of things, like a lot of watchwords like compete and process and culture and systemic and growth. And while all those things have very powerful connotation, they don't mean anything if you're just trying to punt 164 games a year out of 162 to try to get the number 1 pick, right? That's just a cost-effective way to put money back in the ownership pockets before you have to turn around and invest. Now, look, are there ways to take a step back while then taking 2 steps forward? Yeah. And if you're a player and you don't quite understand that organizations are going to ebb and flow and there's going to be a taking a step back to go forward sometimes, you're not paying attention and you're not being reasonable. But it's absolutely reasonable to think that every team in every market should try to compete. Say it again. It's absolutely reasonable to think that every team in every market should try to compete every single year. So to walk away from that, which is what a lot of these guys are doing, in lots of different ways without winning. I mean, and look, let's go a step further. You've got guys that have been in places. You've got front offices or executives that have been in places now about 2 decades or maybe a little bit longer that haven't won a World Series. And they keep reinventing themselves and they keep throwing things out there like process and culture and patience and they keep spending billions of dollars in the wrong direction and they keep whiffing, but they keep their job. I don't know too many other industries, too many other places where that would happen. The only way that happens is because the owners are making more money than what they're putting out, right? So when it comes to what Jayson Stark is suggesting, is it extreme? Yeah. Is it something that is probably not ideal in a perfect world? Yeah, but we are living in an imperfect world, in an even more imperfect situation when it comes to how a lot of these executives are approaching their seasons. And all I have to do with that is look at Tampa Bay and the Rays and how they compete and how they have a different budget they operate on everybody else, and they're in the playoffs. We're competing for a World Series every single year by drafting, by developing, by using analytics properly, by growing the big league team, both with now long-term contracts, right, with Franco and some established things that they're doing there, and also supplementing and realizing what market they're playing in. And these guys probably have, without just in disrespect to the Tampa market, they probably play in front of 11 people a night. And they're still doing it, right? So if they can do it, there's no reason why the Baltimore Orioles can't do it, or the Milwaukee Brewers can't do it, or some of these other clubs, like even the big market clubs who have won, like the Mets have won 78 wins as an average for the last 10 years. How they're not doing it is beyond me. They can do all that. They don't need to just go out and buy the planet. They can reinvent themselves and have a more cohesive system and unit. So I absolutely think that what Jayson Stark is doing, if we went that route, would force the owners who are tanking to fix that process, and it's a good idea.
I think if you're going to fix a process that involves the calculations of which some of these GMs do, I think a better option would be to do what the NBA did, make a draft lottery. Because if you're at the mercy of some ping pong balls, then you can't say to yourself, well, if I finish here, then I've got a certain outcome, other than the fact that you'll have more ping pong balls. So I think if you're going to go and do something drastic, I would rather see an NBA draft lottery type situation in baseball than a situation where the teams that just missed the playoffs, those are the ones that are at the head of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. In a perfect world, I think what you're suggesting makes a lot more sense and is designed to restore competitive balance. The problem that we've got, and look, you know, some people might get sensitive here with what I'm saying, but if you look at Cleveland and with their track record of how they've competed and they've developed players and they've drafted well, but they haven't won. If you look at Texas, they've been all over the map. If you look at Baltimore, so you kind of got to keep looking through what these things are doing and try to decide if that remedy, which is what's intended to be fair, is actually being fair, or if you're just, you know, giving these guys who are tanking, who aren't treating the game with the respect it deserves, you know, more ammunition to do just that.
Here's what I also like about this little platform. It has a clock right in the upper left-hand corner or right-hand corner, depending on how you're looking at it. All right, so we're 12 minutes in. The Hall of Fame. You have some guys who've had incredible careers, remarkable careers. And I don't want to disparage anyone who has now reached the pinnacle of this profession to be in the Hall of Fame. But some of these guys, I don't know. I question whether they are true Hall of Famers. And I don't know the best way of doing that without disparaging them. Because I can tell you there's one guy that I can think of right off the bat that is not in the Hall of Fame that should be in the Hall of Fame. He's a Negro leaguer, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But I look at some of the guys, especially a pitcher who won a lot of Gold Gloves, and I look at his stats, and I don't know, Jeremy. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4 times he finished first in baseball in hits allowed. To me, that tells me that's not a dominant guy. That's not, yes, he won 25 games one year. He had 1, 2, 3 seasons of 20 or more wins. And certainly these guys pitched longer than what we're used to now. But 4 or 5 times he led the league in hits allowed. And I'm guessing he's in the top 10 or top 5 in hits allowed in seasons probably 8 or 9 or 10 times. Is that a Hall of Famer? I don't know.
I'm going to say this, you know, and I'll just bring it back to one person. When you have a guy like Fred McGriff, who has all the numbers in the world to be a Hall of Famer, who did it for such a long period of time at such a high level, both offensively and defensively, and is an ambassador for the game, and writers can't vote him in, the Hall's broken. And I say that because we've let other players in. We as an industry, we as a voting public, whoever we entails, right, have allowed other players in that, whether they deserve to be in or not, don't have his numbers, don't have his longevity, don't have his character or ambassadorship, you know, post-playing career. So for Fred McGriff not to be in the Hall of Fame tells you the rest of it's busted. That just tells you right there. It's not working. Something's off. You're going to have players now, and I'll stop there and I'll say, before this era of voting, this little window we're in of voting, everybody wondered how this era would treat the PEDs, right? How it would treat that. And we're seeing some selectivity. We're seeing some people who have been admitted to the Hall of Fame because they were liked. And we see some people who are not in the Hall of Fame because they weren't liked. Now, some people who weren't liked have earned the reputation not to be liked. And, you know, if you have some confidence and you're willing to stand up for what you believe in, and you do some things that that are a little bit ahead of what others may do. Some people who don't like you are just not going to like you because of that. And some people rubbed some writers and some public the wrong way. But that said, there is no reason why Barry Bonds, who was a Hall of Famer before all of this stuff went down, isn't a Hall of Famer. And there's no reason why Gary Sheffield isn't a Hall of Famer. And there's no reason, again, back to McGriff. So when you start looking at, the person you brought up, the player you brought up, and you look at some of these guys that we're just talking about, who regardless of the situation that the era that they played in were some of the best to ever put on the uniform, there's no reason why they're not in the Hall. Major League Baseball has a way at times of being pretty hypocritical with some of the things that they do, whether that's writers or whether that's scouts or whether that's executives. All of us have a selective part of it. And that's, that's hard to kind of get away from, I guess, in this industry. But that said, those guys are Hall of Famers. So for the Hall of Fame not to allow, even taking Bonds and Sheffield out of it, not to allow Fred McGriff in the Hall, tells me it's broken and it needs to be fixed. What that fix is, I don't know. There's a lot of players out there that are in the Hall of Fame that are less deserving than some of those that aren't.
Fred McGriff, 2002 at the age of 38, 30 home runs, more than 100 runs driven in at the age of 38. That's pretty good.
And you've never heard his name mentioned at all in PEDs. Like, this isn't somebody who is ever mentioned as part of that. 491 home runs, is that right? 491 is a career.
493.
493, and not 7 home runs away, and he's not in the Hall. No disrespect to Jeff Bagwell, who was an excellent hitter and a pretty good player, but if he's a Hall of Famer, McGriff's a Hall of Famer. And so when you look at those type of situations, that tells me that this is a selective voting process. And to compound that with the analytic era, has given us different criteria for evaluating people to get in the Hall. And it's almost like, and man, it's really hard to say because you don't want to disrespect anybody who's in there, because pinnacle of sport, like you said, tough to do, one of the greatest players to play, regardless of whether or not they're enshrined. But the analytic era has opened things up to give us, in some ways, some different appreciation for what some players did that were overlooked before by traditional metrics. But in lots of ways, it's also given us an excuse to make it easier to get in. And the way you fix this, sadly, for the people that have been voting, is you have to have a voting criteria of quality, and you allow ex-players and ex-managers and ex-coaches to vote. And you can even allow, some current players, managers, and coaches to vote. But, as I say that, you might get somebody using defensive runs saved as a metric to keep Derek Jeter out of the Hall of Fame too. So I would kind of lean towards more people who have done all that before, been there, done that have some perspective, that have competed along with the writers, because they have perspective, but there's got to be a balance besides just the writers.
I think I would weigh it more towards the writers, though. I think because the Veterans Committee, disrespect rather, I wonder if the Veterans Committee has a softer spot for the guys they competed against. I wouldn't even bother with today's players, because you and I both know today's players, the majority of them, they're not really into the past of baseball. There are certainly some exceptions, but I would argue a lot of players don't. That's not their thing, the past.
I'd give Alex Bregman a vote. I would give Mike.
I didn't say everybody. Alex Bregman, perfect example. Lance McCullers, another great example.
Right. I'd give Trout a vote. I'd give Verlander a vote. I would give Michael Conforto a vote. I would give, there's guys all over the league that you give a vote to. Lorenzo Cain, I'd give him a vote. I mean, Christian Yelich, right? I mean, you can find guys out there who know what they're doing, that have studied the game of baseball to get where they are today, that are current. Maybe it's the union reps. Maybe that's part of it too. There just needs to be a way to counteract some of the popularity contests and these ballots that we've seen. Because a lot of these guys are throwing away votes rather than vote for people who deserve to be in. And it's certainly not universal. And the writers still need to have their votes because they still cover the game and they see it all from a different lens. But the players, the ex-players, the ex-managers, coaches, and scouts need to have a vote as well.
Spotswood Polls, Negro League. Look them up. Bill James called him the Black Ty Cobb. And unfortunately, when Major League Baseball, the Hall of Fame, went back and looked at a lot of statistics or did a project to curate or create a better database, that was past Spotswood Poll's prime. And the fact that that guy is not in the Hall of Fame,
I do always appreciate the players that you find and and the notes that you find on these guys. Jason, one of the best I've ever seen. I can tell you that I wholeheartedly agree, and that the Negro Leagues for too long have been overlooked, but that's selective. And of course now they're recognized, and Buck O'Neil gets in this year, and hopefully with any kind of luck, the door will be open for more players to get in that are deserving. So if guys like that aren't in the Hall, past eras and current eras, it's an issue.
What bothered me is maybe it's going on a decade now. Maybe it was 15 years ago. Major League Baseball, I think the Hall of Fame, they had a special ballot, right, for I don't want to say a large group of Negro League players, but a substantial number of Negro League players, and not all got in. And when pressed about some of these guys' candidacy, they said it wasn't fair. Well, if you're going to bring these guys' legacies back from the grave, I think you owed it to the families and their supporters to say why was this person's credentials not good enough to get in. And that's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I came from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which has a very rich tradition, Negro League baseball. Mm-hmm. The Harrisburg Giants were there. They had an amazing outfield, including Oscar Charleston, Fats Jenkins. Oscar Charleston, of course, is in the Hall of Fame. But anyways, if you look up Spotswood polls and you don't look at the numbers that are on Baseball Reference, because that was at the end of his career, if you really do a deep dive into what he meant to the game and how he played the game, again, I just don't understand how a guy like that is not in the Hall of Fame. Anyhow, let's move on now to a very interesting name resurfacing. That is Jonathan Singleton, who received a huge contract from the Astros. Many would say, listen, that was some good foresight. I mean, here you lock in a guy who has a lot of potential, and it didn't work out. And the Brewers have signed him. Jonathan Singleton had been playing in Mexico. He was in 46 games, like a 1,200 OPS, 15 homers. Certainly strikeouts were a big thing for him in the big leagues, but also, let's be honest, he was under suspension and basically told the AP in 2014 that he was battling an addiction to marijuana. I'm sure you know this, Jeremy, but of course the Brewers president of baseball operations is David Stearns, who was with the Astros when Singleton played there. Low risk, potential high reward. Why not? That's my take on it.
Good for Jonathan to get another chance. He's obviously earned it statistically. It sounds like whatever addictions or demons he was dealing with, he's be able to get through them, and that's always a daily battle for anybody that has them. So he deserves a pat on the back first and foremost, and all the support he can get in his personal life to make sure that continues. David Stearns has done this before with Eric Thames, and he pulled him out of Korea, and we had Eric in Seattle. Eric had been in Toronto before that. Pulled him back to play some first base after monster numbers, and signed him to a contract, a big league deal at the time. Good, so he's not opposed to going to find players anywhere. I will say he does rely on his veteran scouting staff to do some things. I know they're very involved in the Rule 5 with undervalued assets and how to go ahead and mine the lower levels of the minor leagues with guys that are exposed a little bit. So not surprised at all. Regarding the contract that Jonathan signed before, that's good for Jonathan that he got that. I think that was an irresponsible deal at the time. I think everybody would understand that. I think Jonathan would tell you if it's an irresponsible deal for the club looking back. And that's not anything to do with him. It's just, playing the big leagues is tough, regardless of the era, regardless of how it's going on. It's just tough to do. And those guys need to have some established numbers and time before you give them a bunch of money. But, that said, good for him. He's back. He's got a chance to be back on this side and with the club, and hopefully with an executive that has some familiarity.
I look at it more as like a roll of the dice, and the Astros lost that one.
I'm not
sure. $10 million. I mean, in this day and age, what's $10 million to a team?
Yeah, but that was what, 2012?
14? No, 2000.
When he signed the deal. It was 2011 or 12. 2012 maybe, right?
It says he signed the deal according to ESPN. Excuse me. According to the AP, he signed it in 2014.
14. Okay, so if he's in your system, and I believe you said 2014, he mentioned he was having.
You know what? That might not be right. Let me look this up.
I think it was 2012, but
what you're saying seems to be more. I think that would be correct, but let me look. Go ahead.
All right. So if he signs a deal in 14 and then says he has an addiction issue right after that, he's been battling, you have to know that as an organization before you commit a bunch of money to him. Especially if he's in your organization. This isn't like an unknown thing that he was hiding, right? If it's 2012 when he signs this deal, that addiction I'm sure had signs of showing up beforehand, and I'm not going to go past that because it's not my business to do so. And everybody deserves a new chance on life. And one of the things that I don't think people get today is a chance to leave the past in the past. And I think Jonathan deserves, like everybody else, to grow and evolve and change and leave the past in the past. So. When it comes to him, those issues should be behind it. From the Astros standpoint, I still think that contract's irresponsible without him ever seeing a day in the big leagues. I understand it was a roll of the dice, like you're saying. I agree with it, but I don't know why you'd give anybody any real money without seeing him perform at the highest level first. That's just me.
It was 2014. It was 2014.
Okay. So if it's 2014, then he announces he has an addiction or says he has an addiction right after that. The fact that you don't know that in your organization is extremely irresponsible. And that goes back to, the people that were running the organization at the time, and just another one of those lack of human feel situations that they had, all the way down to some of the things that happened with breaking codes. So it's just, you have to have some human feel in how you're doing things and understand some people in your organization. And if all you ever do is have your attention one direction instead of the whole thing, and or some of the stuff we're seeing now, which is, let's say, making moves for shock value. Let's just do that in how you're approaching your organization rather than doing what the best thing is for the club and understanding the players that are there. If that's what you're doing, then you're going to miss stuff like that. So, but again, good for Jonathan, good for him. And I'm just really glad he's got a chance today in 2021 to step forward into the present, leave the past in the past, and get another shot at Major League Baseball.
Time now for a flashback. Jeremy Booth's 2015 report on Dillon Tate. Did you like Dillon Tate? Well, let me read the report first.
Well, hold on. Before you read the report, I want to answer if I liked them, because I don't want anybody to think this was colored. Okay. And what you tell me, because I haven't looked at this report literally since I wrote it. And the reason why I haven't looked at it is three reasons. Number one, we weren't taking him anyway. He went like 4 in the country, and we were picking in the 60s. So he was basically a drive-by. We call it a drive-by, write him up, respect report, throw him in the hopper, see what happens later. I was not sold at the time as to whether or not he was a starter or reliever. And I thought he was a reliever, but you have to put him in as a starter. You can't take a guy in the first round. It was every bit of a first-round arm. You can't take him in the first round without thinking he's going to start. 4 kind of shocked me a little bit, to be honest with you. I was like, but every 31 as somebody I know who this is his phrase, not mine. 31 flavors, like Baskin Robbins. Everybody has a little different way of liking things and doing stuff. And the Rangers thought he was that guy at 4. So you try to write that report as nicely and aggressively as you can with respect to his arm. But I thought he was a reliever. Now, also, I have not followed his career since then. I know he's bounced around a little bit, but I don't know where he's at now. Last I saw, he was in Baltimore. So that's where I'll stop. Now go ahead.
All right, let me get the report. I had it. And but yes, he's in Baltimore right now,
Okay.
and it hasn't been a good ride thus far in Baltimore. When I looked at some of his statistics and his metrics, it's very interesting because you write number 2 starter in a major league role, power arm. This is the one thing about going live. I got to make sure that I'm there. We go. Let me get back to the report. Number 2 starter in major league role, power arm, big fastball that plays even better than the velocity with deception and life, slider more than enough to protect it, usable curveball and change to keep hitters honest, control over command, but enough to make hitters protect the zone, can pitch with his fastball, keep hitters conscious on both sides of the plate, needs to build innings and endurance as he has relieved in college, wiry, strong, and has the frame to give you middle front of the rotation innings over a long haul.
All of that, I will tell you right now, looking back on it, even 7 years later, I would say is true. That's why he went 4. The concern was, did you say he relieved in college there? Okay, that's the concern. We talked about that before, making relievers into starters, right? And so, all right, go on. There you go.
No, I just, it's funny though, when you look at so this past year with Baltimore, he was 0-6. He pitched in 62 games, 0-6, 49 strikeouts in 67 innings, 3 saves. You know, he's allowing 8.1 hits per 9 innings, and his strikeouts have dipped to 6.5 per 9 innings. In fact, when you look at most of his per 9 innings numbers, they have regressed considerably. 2020, he was pretty good. He had a 3.24 ERA, 1-1, but he only pitched 16 innings. But I find it very interesting when you break down where he ranks in percentiles. Fastball spin rate, poor, 3 percentile. He's in the 3rd percentile, I should say. Fastball velocity, he's in the 81st percentile. Exit velocity, 76th percentile. Chase rate is kind of in the middle, very low K percentage, whiff percentage. And it appears it's a guy who has a good arm, throws strikes, maybe too many strikes, and isn't fooling guys. Would that be a pretty accurate assessment?
It sounds like he was a 4-seam guy back in college. He was,
well, guess what? It's funny you mention that because 4-seam fastball right now, in 2021, he threw that just 1% of the time, almost 2%. He's pretty much a sinker guy now.
Well, that's going to affect the spin, right? Because sinkers aren't going to spin as fast as 4-seam.
That's true.
So you got to throw that out. What it sounds like is that he was reinvented a little bit to try to give him something to keep people off the 4-seam fastball, right? And the ball, he was a heavy 4-seam guy in college at UC Santa Barbara. He was fine with that. He was able to sink it a little bit, but it sounds like complete reinventing to go with that slider and keep guys out of, off one or the other to give them something to protect. It definitely sounds like a reliever arsenal. It sounds like a swing guy arsenal right now. It underscores the fact that velocity doesn't mean everything because you have to be able to protect that velocity, and I actually had a conversation on Twitter not too long ago with somebody who said, well, you don't need to protect the velocity. You just need that's a good example right there of needing to protect the velocity. Dillon Tate has a great arm, always has. So, it just sounds like he went out in development and didn't work well, and he's trying to find himself. Sometimes that can happen later. Sometimes that happens sooner. That was 2015 draft. So this is 21. So I'm going to say he's about 27. So he has some more time to figure it out. And certainly Baltimore, everybody's had a bad year in Baltimore. Baltimore's had a bad year in Baltimore. So, he needs to, over there, they got a lot of things to do to correct some of the processes that they're having, and they may be closer to doing that than people think. So, look, the velocity's still there. He's not going to get a lot of chase if he's showing the ball early, if he's not getting guys swinging and missing there, in the zone or conscious in the zone, uncomfortable. They're not going to chase outside of the zone. So he's going to, it's a reinventing. We'll see where this goes for him, but he's definitely got a good arm, and as long as he's got a uniform, he's got a chance.
Your body comparison.
Yeah, I know. That one.
Was a trip into the Wayback Machine.
I remember who that one was.
Who was it?
It was Dave Stewart.
No, almost.
Are you kidding? Who did I put in there?
No. A similar. That's a good one too. Another Oakland A. Mike Norris.
Oh, Mike Norris. They're totally different bodies. I think I looked at him once and said Dave Stewart, and then went to Mike Norris after that. I was a little kid watching the A's, when I was growing up around that clubhouse, and Mike Norris is somebody that I just was infatuated with as a pitcher. It was fun to watch. He had such good stuff. A much shorter career than he should have had stuff-wise, but man, he was fun. Yeah.
All right, everybody. What's that?
That was a way back pull. That was 6 years old, 7 years old, pulling it out of my pocket. That was good. So.
All right. So everybody, that's our first journey into the live podcast space. How do you think it went, Jeremy?
I think it went pretty good
for this stuff. I'm the one that has to move the camera. I'm the one that has to set things up.
We just need some more music. We need some music at the front, music in the back. That's all we need, and we're good.
All right. Well, we'll see how this went. We'll reevaluate.
Live is always great, man. I'm a fan of live. And for people out there that don't, that may wonder, Jason and I, we do this we just go over topics and then we just roll. There's really no script to, even if we're doing it live from the ballpark in the postseason or, even at Sports Extra, we just roll with it. There's no, hey, you're going to say this, you're going to say that. It's just a bunch of cues. And so live is where we do a lot of our stuff. I'm totally comfortable with it. I know Jason is, and I'm all good. I much prefer this than the taped. I'm good with this one right here.
I like taped. Anyways, hey, thanks to everybody for retweeting, including the KHOU 11 Twitter account. So anyhow, I will continue my week off.
I don't know what that is.
We never take weeks off, though. That's the thing, right? We just don't do it. So, all right, everybody, we're going to end this broadcast, and we'll post it on all the normal podcast spots. Yeah, I think we're done.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.